Hi guys, good afternoon. This is Halftime Report on CNBC TV 18. I'm Sonia Shenoy and joining me is Nigel D'Souza. Things have been a bit tricky for the market. Actually, the bulls have lost a bit of their grip, and in fact now the Sensex and the Nifty are trading in the red. They've given up all of their morning gains quite swiftly actually. HDFC Bank is the one that's seeing some sharp profit taking this morning, down about 2% odd. Reliance Industries as well coming in for profit taking. So I guess that seems to be the theme of the day. Other heavyweights like Infosys, ITC are also under a bit of pressure. We have a big event upon us tomorrow, the RBI Monetary Policy. So let's see what comes out of that. But in the meantime, we'll be tracking all the top stories for you. Nigel, hi, afternoon.
Well, hi, Sonia. You said it, right? The markets are trading with strong gains of around 100 points odd, and now the Nifty is in the red. I was looking at the Shanghai market, and that as well has moved into the red. So that's down close to around 0.2%. It was holding well in the green. So there is some, some kind of nervousness in the rest of Asia as well. And, that comes up for you on the screen. Well, Sonia was talking about the RBI event, and in fact, RBI's 3-day monetary policy meeting is currently underway. CNBC TV 18 conducted a poll among some of the top economists and bankers to get a sense of what they're expecting from the Reserve Bank of India this time around. Ritu Singh joins us to fill us in with the findings. Ritu?
Our poll seems to suggest that the street is divided on whether or not we will see a rate cut from Reserve Bank of India this time around. Half the respondents believe that the MPC may front load the rate cut, which means we will see a 25 basis point reduction in repo rates. But the other half believes that RBI may choose to pause for two key reasons. One, transmission is incomplete. RBI has cut rates by 115 basis points since Feb, whereas banks have only passed on 70 to 75 basis points of that cut. And secondly, and more importantly, the last inflation reading in June was above RBI's tolerance band of 6%, and therefore RBI may choose to hold fire this time around. We also asked the respondents on the quantum of rate cuts they see in this entire calendar year. 70% seem to believe that we will see another 50 basis point reduction in the repo rates. On the reverse repo front, 60% believe that there will be a further 25 basis point reduction. On the macro parameters, however, if you recall, the Reserve Bank of India has not really given a figure for the GDP forecast for the current fiscal. All it said is that growth will be in the negative territory in this financial year. 50% of our respondents believe that RBI may give a -4 to -5% GDP figure for FY21, but 40% continue to believe that RBI will refrain from giving any forecast even in this policy. On the inflation front, 50% believe that inflation will remain below MPC's target of around 4%, whereas 30% believe it may exceed that amount. And lastly, aside from all of these policy actions, the key things that the street will be watching out for are: one, will there be any one-time restructuring scheme announced? If not, the scheme itself perhaps an indication of whether the Reserve Bank of India is considering a one-time restructuring scheme. Second, what happens to the moratorium when it ends on the 31st of August? Will there or will there not be an extension? And lastly, any other further relief measures that the Reserve Bank of India may announce in this policy.
All right, Ritu, thanks a lot for that. So that will be the big thing to watch actually, whether anything on the one-time restructuring for bank loans will be allowed or not. But in the meantime, we had a chance to catch up with the Citizens Monetary Policy Committee to find out what the consensus view is. Listen into what they had to say.
If the MPC can take a leap of faith that this is not the true extent of the inflation, and going forward, these numbers will be significantly revised down, and the 9 to 12 month ahead forecast will be significantly lower, only then they can consider the growth angle. Otherwise, my sense is that inflation should get much more weight in this policy, given that this is sustaining at a very high level for a long time.
Okay, so this is the first hint that there are people who are not expecting a rate cut or will not advise a rate cut. Sajid, what would your take be? Growth is still dire even if inflation is at 6. So can the MPC look at things, look at other ways to promote growth? Is an incremental, another 15, 25 basis going to make such a big difference?
Yeah.
Lata, I think you've laid out why the MPC goes into this meeting sitting on the horns of a dilemma. When you have both an adverse demand shock and an adverse supply shock, like the kind you see in COVID, we know for sure activity goes down. But which way prices and inflation goes depends on which of these shock dominates. So I think, like Shaumiran, I was surprised by both the breadth and the depth of the core inflation increase in June. April and May were estimated imputed numbers. June was a collected number. And if you look at June's inflation number, core inflation across the board surged.
Can you give us the idea from a bank's point of view? Banks are in a dire strait. So how should the RBI approach financial stability from the point of view of banks?
Well, if you look at it strictly in terms of the point of view of the bank, in a sense, what you're saying is that the role of RBI as the regulator dominates its role as a macro policy maker. But the problem that the banks are facing is that there's a huge amount of liquidity. There has been no real reduction in their lending, actually the cost of funds, because the process of changing the deposit rates can only be forward-looking. So the banks are in deep trouble. And in a situation where there is very little appetite for new loans, the kind of liquidity that has gone in has left the banks extremely vulnerable. And so at the moment, I think financial stability is of the highest importance.
Gentlemen, please start your vote and please write it quickly. First vote, of course, is what should the MPC do in the upcoming policy? Is it a cut? By how much, or a pause? Can we start the voting, Samiran? Okay, pause. Dr. Sen? Okay, that's a pause. I should have got to the chairman last. Sonal?
Pause.
Pause. Sajid? Oh, 15 to 25. A minor cut. Okay, 15 to 25. Shaumyo? Pause. Okay, the pause have it. You are not going to likely get a rate cut this time if this is the MPC. Okay, do you expect cuts hereafter? What should be the terminal repo rate be? At the moment it is 4. Samiran, how many more cuts? Can we expect the terminal rate to be 3.5? 50 basis cuts left, though not in the August policy. Dr. Sen, how many more rate cuts?
At the moment, I would say hold at 4.
Okay.
And later, again, this should be a decision which we should not try and force from them now.
Okay.
So later, we really need to revisit the number, but I would go with 3.5% as well.
Okay. Okay, it can go to 3.5. So yes. Dr. Sen also expects another 50 basis cut, but not in August. Sonal?
Yeah, similar, 50 basis points.
50 basis cuts more left. Sajid, how much more left? Including in August. Yep. Okay, 3.75. 1/4% is all Sajid expects. Shaumyo?
I'm expecting 50 to 75, but mostly 50.
50 to 75. So the terminal rate could be 3/4.
Okay, so seems to be the consensus view that a pause is coming tomorrow, so no rate cut, but everyone's talking about the possibility of a one-time restructuring. Let's dip into a short break on that note. On the other side of the break, though, we have our entire research team joining in to tell us about all the stocks that are buzzing this afternoon. Don't go anywhere.